Hello, lovelies. Corey here. Welcome to Wilder Woman. If you're new, hello. And if you are someone who's been here for a while, welcome back. This video, I want to talk about the triple goddess and specifically talk about the discussion that's come up recently within the pagan and Wiccan communities with the idea that the triple goddess, as it has been presented for several decades now, is antiquated. And should we be using something else? Should we even really be defining a goddess or a deity in general, defining a triple deity in terms of biology or antiquated stages of a person's life? Let me explain. So the triple goddess, as she's currently presented in Wiccan pagan communities and traditions, has largely been Maiden, Mother, Crone. Now, this isn't a ancient belief brought forward. This is somewhat modern, at least in the last 60, 70 years. You know, this has really been heavily prevalent in Reconstruction pagan circles, and specifically in Wicca. This was a huge concept. Every Wiccan 101 book that I read in the 80s, how old am I? I'm not that old. Every Wiccan book that I read in the late 90s, early 2000s, really heavily played on this concept. Maiden, Mother, Crone, really breaking up a woman's life in 3 stages centered around her fertility, which a lot of women don't identify with nowadays. This concept really excludes women that don't want to have kids, women who don't really feel a connection to their biology, women who might have fertility issues, trans women, non-binary folks that want to connect with the goddess and really don't feel that tie and don't really connect at all with that version of the triple goddess. Now, historically, we've had triple goddesses in several different pantheons. We have Brigitte, who's a really popular triple goddess from the Celtic pantheon, represented in 3 stages or governances, really, that she has 3 identities, aspects of her personality. She is the poet, you know, the patron of poets. She is also the patron of blacksmiths. She is the patron of midwifery. And those 3 aspects of her personality, which she governs, are considered her triple aspect. That has nothing to do with fertility or stages in a person's life. These can happen really at any given time. And so as we move into spring and I'm looking at connecting with deity, I've really struggled with the concept that I grew up with of, okay, it's springtime. Now it's time to connect with the maiden. Really? And I know that I have a lot of videos on my channel, older videos, where I do talk about the triple goddess in her maiden, mother, and crone aspect and how I work with them. But with the recent discussions in our community and just kind of how I've been feeling in general, I'm disconnected even. I don't feel a connection to this anymore. As I move out of my years of birthing, kind of a weird thing to say, but I spent 8 years of my life either being pregnant, you know, giving birth or recovering from her pregnancy and rolling into the next pregnancy, that now that that chapter has closed in my life, I'm still technically in the mother phase, but I don't feel really connected to that anymore. And there are times in my life where I've been a teenager and I felt more connected to the crone aspect. And working with crone-esque or crone-like deities, I know I use air quotations a lot, please forgive me. It's because I feel a bit of a disconnect with some of the terms that I'm using. And again, this is just based on recent discussions that I've had with other folks in our community and a lot of books that I've been reading recently where they haven't been focused on this triple goddess aspect, the idea of coming back to it seems really foreign to me at this stage. So as I'm rolling into spring, we're coming up on, you know, the spring equinox here. I'm trying to think of how I can connect to maiden-like energy without connecting to this archetype. And I've been writing things down, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to pop on here. I wanted to share some of the archetypes that I've come up with, and I'm working on alternatives for the mother and the crone as well. And what I really wanted to zero in on was an archetype that tapped into this type of energy without really alienating anyone. Anyone at any age, however they identify, could work with this archetype. That was my goal. So I was sitting here thinking, I was thinking of all of the goddesses that I've worked with, thinking about deity in general. And these were also kind of, for the most part, I tried to pick archetypes that were gender neutral as well. So if you are a non-binary person, if you identify as male and you want to work with these archetypes, they're not necessarily tied to gender at all. You can tie them to gender, but that's not the main focus of any of these archetypes. So I have 5 for you that I wanted to talk about and share with you that I personally am wanting to work with in spring. If you guys have any other archetypes that you want to share, please feel free to leave them in the comments below to add to this list. Or if you have any comments about any of these archetypes, I would love to hear your thoughts. So the first one that I came up with, and again, I'm not married to any of these titles, so I'm going to give you some alternative titles, words if you want to use in place of what I have chosen, but these are the names that I came up with. And the first one is the gardener. You could also use the horticulturalist if you're feeling really fancy, or the greenskeeper, if you will. But the gardener for me is that archetype that focuses on planting, growing, and really planning. You know, a gardener has to really pay attention to seasonal challenges, has to pay attention to timing, right? To get your seedlings ready for planting, to plant, to grow, spending time and energy. This is an archetype that I want to work with for really, you know, long-term goals and, you know, really getting your roots down, if that makes sense. So, you know, sparking those ideas. I really feel like this energy connects with key 3 in the tarot, the Empress. And that archetype is what I want to work with as far as planting my garden for the remainder of 2020. And also with connecting to green witchcraft in general. Green witchcraft, I think, is really having a moment right now, and that's probably because a lot of us are really wanting to find new ways to connect to nature. I know that I am. Using dried herbs is okay, but it's something that I've done for so long, and I grew up in the city. I am an urban gal. Trying to find ways to connect to nature is something that's really important to me, especially now that our family doesn't really do the amount of camping that my family did as a child. You know, when I was a kid growing up, we were camping all the time. It seemed like we had a Girl Scout camping weekend like every other weekend, and I couldn't catch a break. Now you know, my husband and I have been so busy, we haven't had time to really pull things together to have like a family camping trip with our kids. And I'm missing it. Right? You always hate it when you're in the middle of it. And then once it's gone, you're like, oh, what? I was so privileged. How could I let this go? But you know, that's how it works, right? And I'm trying, as I said, to find new ways to really connect to greenery. I've bought a number of books on it. I have Green Witchcraft, which is a brand new book that came out by Paige Vanderbeck, the Fat Feminist Witch. If you don't listen to her podcast, please go check her out. I'm starting to really dive into that book, and she lives in an apartment herself. So she's come up with some really great ways of connecting to the gardener archetype, specifically green witchcraft, plants, crystals, natural elements, in order to kind of bring those into your home and into your practice. So you feel a lot more connected to the earth in general, which I think is something that has drawn a lot of pagans to this path, in my opinion. The second archetype that I want to talk to you guys about is the activist, which I feel is heavy Maiden energy, in my opinion. You could also refer to this archetype as the advocate. If you're feeling really bold, the revolutionist. If you're feeling even more daring, maybe even the insurgent. But I like activist. So that is the title that I'm using for this archetype. And this is the archetype, obviously, that would, support you in political magic, political witchcraft, getting justice in general, whether it's for social reasons or just familial reasons or even personal reasons, right? This archetype could help you really find ways to get involved with social issues that are important to you and dive into those and really shadow work those out even, but getting involved. If you're someone that kind of feels a little bit helpless right now, or that your voice isn't being heard, I think tapping into the archetype of the activist and really finding out ways that you can make a difference, and ways that you can, make an impact on the issues that are important to you, the activist would be who I would go to. And the activist is really who I was tapping into and trying to channel when I was voting last week. So if that's something that's important to you, as we're rolling into the rest of the year, I recommend maybe checking out that archetype and really trying to work with it over the next several months. The third archetype that I really feel like can be a breakout for the Maiden is the student, right? AKA the apprentice or the cadet or the neophyte, if you want to be, really mystical with your terminology. But I'm just going with the student. This is the archetype that is really passionate and eager to learn new forms of magic, new techniques, new traditions, really kind of dive in and get involved. And this is the archetype that I'm working with in my current class and the course that I'm taking throughout the year, and really trying to connect with so that I refresh that passion that I had when I signed up for the course. I'm halfway through it. Sometimes when you're halfway through a year-long project, you hit that lull and you're just like, oh, when is this going to be over? You're itching for it to get wrapped up. At least that's how I am. I'm very impatient. Patience is something that I've been working on my entire life. I always want to just get something to the finish line. And working with the student to really kind of slow down and savor each lesson is a focus that I've had for the last several weeks, and that I have a feeling I will be working with all the way through the end of the class at the end of summer. The fourth archetype that I want to talk to you about is the lover, aka the paramour, if you want to be romantic, or maybe even the hedonist, if you are so inclined to use that name. I like the lover. This is, again, a gender neutral archetype. This is something that I still feel connects with that maiden energy. This is that archetype that can support you with your sexuality, tapping into your sensuality, and even taking sex out of the equation, tapping into or working with this archetype for self-love and finding things that bring you pleasure, right? That you really love, I think, is a really good thing to connect this. A good thing to connect to this archetype with or for. So, you know, and also getting comfortable leaning into those things. I think several of us, especially as we become parents, if we become parents, there are different stages in our life where we might kind of lose that connection to the very young, sensual, you know, archetype that we may have been channeling in our early years of dating. You're fueled by hormones. I don't feel the same way I did when I was 21. I sometimes have a really hard time tapping into those things, feeling sensual, just enjoying things that give me pleasure to begin with. Even something like playing video games, which brought me a lot of joy, you know, over the years. I've had a hard time with that. I've gotten into this, you know, point in my life where it's all about adulting. And I really feel like connecting with the lover archetype can help me get out of that rut and realize that there's more to life than just adulting, that there's more to life than just surviving day after day, that there's a lot of pleasure in the world. Going outside for a nice walk, taking a nice long hot bath. I can't tell you the last time I took a bath. It's been showers for probably a good 4 years. I'm not even exaggerating. I think the last time I took a bath was probably, 2016. It was before I got pregnant with the second to last one. So it was in between having baby number 3 and baby number 4. That's sad, huh? I say this as my husband is upstairs taking a bath, by the way. So tapping into that type of energy is very maiden-like, at least in my opinion, and an aspect that I really want to explore further this year. I've got a lot of work to do. But if you're looking for something that's very spring energy, this archetype would be at the top of my list. And then the final archetype that I want to share with you guys, because this video is already very, very long, trying to wrap it up here, is the Daredevil, aka the adventurer, the hero or heroine, depending on what you want to go after. But I really like the Daredevil personally. And this is, you know, that archetype that can help you connect to your playful side, your inner child, your adventurous side. You know, I really kind of see this archetype tied to Sagittarius and, you know, Key Zero, the Fool. This archetype is about having faith and taking that leap of faith. So if there's something in spring that you really want to, you want to take that risk, you know, and really do some big magic around the spring equinox, I would recommend inviting in the Daredevil or the adventurer into your circle and really connecting to that divine energy and that divine archetype. And, you know, finding that courage in order to pull off that big magic. Think Goonies, you know, specifically Mikey's character, right? Where he's just like, Goonies never say die. I love that movie. Now I want to go watch it. But just that faith that he had to go on that adventure, to find One-Eyed Willie, because all he had was that weekend. All he and his friends had were that weekend. So this archetype is all about all you have is now. So you might as well go big or go home. And if that's the kind of magic that you're wanting to type into and work with this spring, that's the archetype I would recommend. So those are the 5 archetypes that I'm going to be working with in replacement of the Maiden. And yeah, I'm going to come up with 5 more for each aspect. So 5 archetypes to replace the mother and 5 to replace the crone. And again, these are ageless archetypes. They really have nothing to do with what stage of your life that you're in. They don't really have anything to do with gender, age, ability. It doesn't take anything into consideration. This is just an aspect of divine energy. And I think really that's the most important. So if you are trying to work on a replacement for the triple goddess, I would love to hear your thoughts and your thoughts on what you think of these 5 archetypes and whether or not you're going to be working with them this spring or even at all this year. And if you do anything, let me know, because I'd be super interested to know what you guys think and what you're doing. Just because you know I'm a nosy witch. All right. That's it for this video. Wanted to try and make it really quick. I know that it wasn't very quick. Also, I am using a brand new webcam, which is why I look really orange right now. I had the ring light that's attached to it on, and honestly, it was blinding me. So I'm going to try and figure something out. I would like to record more videos in the daytime. You guys know the drill. I have a muggle 9-to-5 job. Prevents me from doing a lot of daytime videos. So recording at 10 o'clock at night is pretty much my MO. It's what I'm working with. I hope you guys enjoyed this video nonetheless. And I hope that you are subscribed so you don't miss out on the next video and catch when we talk about the mother and the crone. But until then, blessed be.